Hello, and welcome back to A Real Horror Show. So a question that I get asked quite regularly about my horror collection is what are the most valuable and rare items that I own? And that can be a somewhat difficult question to answer for a few reasons. One is that sometimes I forget how much I've spent on these collectibles in the past. That just goes to show how responsible I am with money. But also, rarity and value are two different things. For example, I could have spent a huge amount of cash on one particular collectible. And on the other hand, I could have taken a collectible to a convention to get signed by a celebrity, and all in all that puts the value of that item greater and higher on the rarity scale as well. Am I making any sense? There's also a couple of items in particular on this list that didn't cost me that much, but are two of the rarest and most unique oddities in my collection. Anyway, I thought I might as well make a video discussing and showcasing what I consider to be some of the rarest and most expensive collectibles in my collection. And these items won't particularly be in any certain order on this list, and for a lot of these collectibles it's actually hard to give a certain figure as to how much they're worth, but they're certainly all invaluable to me, and they're also all really f***ing cool. But I promise you, all of these collectibles are really special, and they are some of the best collectibles in my entire collection. So without further ado, let's get to it. And if you're into your horror collectibles, you probably know about these guys. These are considered two of the holy grail action figures of NECA horror collecting, especially this 𝙄𝙍𝙎𝙬𝙁. And even though these guys came out years ago, about 2006 I think, in the NECA Cult Classics line, this is still the last time that NECA have actually made figures based on the original 1978 Halloween movie. And the Evolution of Evil set in particular is such an awesome set that definitely deserves an updated or ultimate release. Imagine this set as an ultimate 2-pack today. By the way, I just made a video showcasing what I believe to be the best figures from NECA's ultimate line, so make sure you go check that out. And speaking of 2-packs, here we have the Night He Came Home box set from 2004, again by NECA Toys. This is still a much beloved and legendary collectible from NECA. There's so much to love about this set, from the whole Myers house diorama and the fact that this was the only time Dr. Loomis was given an official action figure release, until just recently with NECA's Ultimate H2 box set, which is somewhat of a modern update of this set, despite this being based off the original Halloween of course. I talk about that set in good detail by the way in that Ultimate Figure video, so again, go check it out. And to make this just that more special, it's also signed by the one and only Master of Horror, John Carpenter. Now this is a figure that I actually believe hasn't even made an appearance on this channel yet, but it's one that I love dearly. And it's this Distinctive Dummies Pennywise figure from the 1990 mini-series version of Stephen King's It. As I said, this is by the company Distinctive Dummies, and they create custom action figures in very limited quantities of various horror and cult classic characters. If you've never heard of Distinctive Dummies before or checked out their releases, you're in for an absolute treat. And to top things off, these guys put an insane amount of work and love into these custom figures. Of course, this is Pennywise as played by the great Tim Curry in the original It, and is numbered 20 out of a run of only 60 in existence. And this came out years before NECA made their own retro cloth Pennywise, which I'll get to in just a minute. As you can see, Pennywise appears here in his battery acid face state, as seen at the climax of the original It miniseries. The first chapter of the series, that is. And the sculpting here is phenomenal. The work that has gone into the tailoring of this guy is also just outstanding. The custom hand-drawn artwork is also really cool and gives this figure just so much character. Taking a quick look at NECA's Pennywise, it's safe to say that this one is superior, and that's for obvious reasons, but it would be unfair to compare the two of these for obvious reasons. And by the way, this NECA figure is actually one of my favourites that the company have ever put out there. That said, this Distinctive Dummies figure still stands its ground due to its sheer amount of just charm and its detail and overall its tailoring. It's just a really stunning release. Up next is my life-size replica Good Guy doll from Trick or Treat Studios. Man, Child's Play was the movie that got me into horror, and I still remember being a little kid and wanting a screen-accurate life-size Chucky doll really bad. Years later, that dream was finally accomplished thanks to Trick or Treat Studios, making this thing a reality, which I'm very thankful for. They did a magnificent job replicating the good guy doll in quite immaculate detail, but one thing that I never thought would ever happen would be meeting the voice of Chucky himself, the legendary Brad Dourif, and getting this doll signed by him. But it did happen, and that's what gives this good guy a spot on this list. And an additional Child's Play item, which is a bit of an oddity and I assume will be quite obscure, is this display featuring a small collection of strands of hair from a screen-used good guy doll, as seen in the factory scene of Child's Play 2. Which, by the way, is probably my favourite Child's Play movie. Let me know in the comments what your favourite film in the Chucky series is. It's such a neat thing to have in the collection, but it's also a really special little screen-used prop, and this won't be the only thing on the list from the real set of a horror film. Next is certainly one of my favourite action figure collectibles in my entire collection, and it's this Vital Toys Frankenfurter figure, as seen in the ultimate cult classic movie, The Rocky Horror Picture Show. I don't think I've ever talked about how much I love The Rocky Horror Show on this channel before, but I love it a lot. There's way too much to talk about when it comes to Rocky Horror, as it is one of my all-time favourite movies. But I had the absolute honour of meeting the one and only Tim Curry a couple of times in the past, and those were really special moments for me. God, I love that man. When we first met, Tim actually asked if I was an actor, and I said, no, I'm not an actor, what makes you think that? And then he said, and I quote, "You have amazing cheekbones." Frankenfurter just said, I have amazing cheekbones. That's a win in my book, but it was such a pleasure to meet Tim, and I'm so proud to own this figure in my collection. The fact that it's signed in red also makes this piece look so lovely, and it's pretty clear why this makes the list. I think it's an absolute tragedy, by the way, that we haven't ever gotten any Rocky Horror action figures since the year 2000. NECA actually had figures of Frank and Riff Raff planned to be released for the Cult Classics line, and unfortunately that never happened. And they looked amazing. I seriously hope that NECA considers revising the figures and releasing them, especially with it being the movie's 50th anniversary in 2025. Now here's an item that doesn't really fall into the horror genre, but it's still one of my personal grail pieces in my collection. And it's this Dunn & Co bowler hat signed by actor Malcolm McDowell, who played the anti-hero Alex DeLarge in Stanley Kubrick's A Clockwork Orange. Talk about iconic. This is one of those things I thought I would never own in my collection. Thankfully, I had the opportunity to meet Malcolm a couple of years ago, and he is honestly one of the coolest people I've ever had the honour of meeting. A Clockwork Orange is definitely up there in my list of all-time favourite movies. This bowler hat is made by the same company that the hats that was used in the film were made by. I still have to pinch myself sometimes when I look over and I see this thing in the display case. As you can see, Malcolm wrote "Viddy well" on the hat, which is just so cool. Again, iconic. Now of course we're moving on to some Evil Dead goodness, of which my collection is plentiful. We may as well kick things off with Ash Williams' iconic chainsaw hand, and this replica is made using the housing and original parts of a real Homelite XL chainsaw model. That's the same chainsaw that they used in the film. This alone is already one of the best display pieces and prop replicas in my entire collection, but to make things even better, it's also signed by the king himself, Bruce Campbell. Meeting Bruce and having this thing signed was honestly such a surreal experience. I think I've described it before as like King Arthur handing me Excalibur or something like that. It certainly felt that way. This is definitely a pride and joy of mine, and I really appreciate Bruce's funny little quote that he wrote on it too. Next up we have some production and potentially screen used artifacts from the actual cabin from Evil Dead 2. This small collection of items are genuinely invaluable to me, and an overall holy grail display for sure. The Evil Dead 2 cabin stood in woodland a few miles east of Wadesboro, North Carolina, and when the landowners were going to completely destroy what remained of the set, a fan called Mike Pasquale was given permission to salvage as much of the cabin as he possibly could. Ultimately, he sold a lot of the remnants of the cabin to fans all around the world, me included. If you want to know more about the history of the cabin set and its full story, I actually currently have a video in the works. Included in this display of artifacts, we have various pieces of wood from the cabin, a section of its tin roof, 2 pieces of smashed glass, and a lump of coal. What's really cool though about this lump of coal is that it's from the ditch that Ash buries his recently possessed girlfriend Linda in near the start of the movie. So that means that this is one of those coal pieces that you can see Ash shoveling over Linda in that scene of the film. I also wonder if maybe these glass pieces were smashed by Sam Raimi himself with his Ramocam. As a huge Evil Dead fan, it's seriously surreal to own these artifacts, and I'm forever grateful. Now, in terms of horror figures and statues, there is one particular piece in my horror collection that costs an absolute arm and a leg for sure, and it's without a doubt the most expensive collectible I have ever purchased. And it's this behemoth right here, the 1:3 scale polystone statue of Ash Williams by the company Prime One Studio. I'm not kidding when I say this guy is gigantic, with a total height of about 3 feet in total. It's certainly an impressive and imposing statue, and I'm so thankful to have converted this closet into a display space for this guy. There is a hell of a lot I can say about this statue, and I think it really does deserve its own video. I'll be honest and say that I do have a love-hate relationship with this piece, but I'll save that for a more in-depth review. I love the way that Ash is posed here with his foot on the cellar, and as we can see, the dead-eyed Henrietta is down there trying to get out. The statue also features the infamous laughing deer head, which is honestly one of my favourite aspects of this whole piece, and it also comes with Ash's possessed hand and a Kandarian dagger. Overall, this is a really awesome looking statue and definitely has a huge presence in the horror collection, but there's a lot of things here that Prime One got wrong. I'm going to save that for another time though, because there's certainly a lot to unpack there. The final Evil Dead related collectible we'll be taking a look at today are none other than these absolutely stunning Evil Dead Trilogy art prints done by the incredible Graham Humphreys. I could have talked about quite a few of art prints that I own in the collection, as I have a handful of cast signed pieces, but again, that could be a whole video on its own. The reason I'm singling out these prints in particular, however, is that for one, they're extremely limited edition and all completely sold out. Secondly, they are the thing that people ask me about the most out of my entire collection. Seriously, I cannot begin to tell you how often somebody asks me where I get these posters from, and the answer is the insanely talented Graham Humphreys. If you haven't checked out Graham's work, go and check it out. He also did the theatrical artwork for the original Evil Dead films when they were released back in the 80s. As well as other horror movies such as A Nightmare on Elm Street, for example. But thirdly, these prints are also all signed by both Bruce Campbell and the legendary Sam Raimi. Additionally, the Evil Dead print is signed by Betsy Baker, who played Linda, Teresa Tilly, who played Shelly, and Hell Delrich, who played Scotty. The Evil Dead 2 print is also signed by the one and only Greg Nicotero, who did the special effects work for the film with his company, K&B Effects. And also, the Army of Darkness print is signed by Billy Bryan, who played the Pit Witch in the film. A little fun fact is that Billy is also known for playing the iconic Stay Puft Marshmallow Man in Ghostbusters. It's safe to say that my collection room would not be the same without these prints, and again, they're absolutely invaluable to me. So, for the final item on this list, we're returning to one of horror's greatest icons. It probably won't come as much of a shock that this is included on the list, but it's this NAG Studios 75k Castle Special Edition Myers Mask replica, signed by both the original shape, Nick Castle, and the Master of Horror, John Carpenter. The Mask of Michael Myers is one of the most iconic images in horror, and this mask in particular, made by the very talented Nikos Terezios, is one of the most screen-accurate replicas of the mask on the market. And to top all of that off, it's signed by 2 absolute legends. I think this piece really does speak for itself in terms of why it's so special, and it will forever be one of the most prized possessions and one of the all-time holy grail pieces in my horror collection. And there we have it for today's video, guys. I really hope you all enjoyed this dive into the rarities and the most valuable items in my horror collection. If you're a collector yourself, please let me know in the comments below what your personal holy grail items are in your collection. And also, what was your favourite item that we took a look at today? Don't forget to like, comment and subscribe, and also hit that notification bell so you don't miss any future uploads. And until next time, guys, take care.